la 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 la. Note taking. Have you ever struggled to take notes well? Take notes in a way that makes your memory work for you instead of against you, and in a way that helps you concentrate better on what it is that you're doing in school? Well, let me tell you, the whole thing about note taking that I want to get to is that there are alternative ways to take notes that will help you a great deal, and you want to explore them, try them, give yourself an opportunity to do it in a risk-free environment so that you're not forgetting stuff that you need to know. But if you develop skills with these alternative ways of note-taking, I think you're really going to find that you are getting some great memory value out of your memory that you might be losing otherwise by not using these note-taking techniques that I'm going to talk about. And this is Anthony Metivier, by the way, from magneticmemorymethod.com. That's magneticmemorymethod.com. Love for you to go and head over to that website at any time. And if you're hopping on the call, say hello, where you are in the world, hit that thumbs up button, let me know you're engaged, and let me know what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what your experiences with note-taking are. And a little story I remember, with school being very, very difficult for me. I think one of the reasons why it was so difficult is really because I wasn't allowed to take notes the way that I wanted to. I wasn't allowed to explore different opportunities, but had to pay attention in particular ways in order to appease the rules of the school. And we have to forgive school for the rules that they put upon us. But I remember people like Mr. Cook and Mrs. Kipp come to mind, and they were really great teachers, they just had an amazing skill with students and a huge job. But one of the things about it is that they would punish if you weren't sitting still, if you weren't doing things as you were supposed to. And I liked to draw expansively. I liked to really make a lot of mess, and it wasn't allowed. And so you get punished for being creative in school, and that was really, really frustrating. If you're hopping on live, let me know where you are in the world and what your experience with note-taking is. Aaron is here from Citrus Heights, California. Thanks for letting me know you're here. Really appreciate you letting me know, and I hope everything is good there. It sounds like a great place to be. Let us know what your thoughts about note-taking is and what kind of struggles you've had with it. We're going to talk about 5 note-taking techniques in particular, and we might not get through all of them, but if you go to magneticmemorymethod.com, the new podcast is on note-taking, and there's a real long training there, and don't get scared by long. That means in-depth. Lots of things to try, lots of things to explore and experience. And the whole thing is that note-taking, if it's boring, it never works. It's got to be exciting. It's got to create energy. It's got to give you material that you want to revisit, and that you can revisit clearly and in a way that enables you to remember what the information was, decode it, so to speak, but without having to write so much that you're actually getting lost. You're losing the information, right? You want to be really connected with it. You want to be able to connect with it to such an extent that it's helping you increase your focus while you're doing it, and you're not missing critical information. So it's an important topic. And let's catch up with some comments here. Aaron says, I remember being told that we only remember a very small percentage of what we hear, and most of it is a small part of the last thing we hear. I find note-taking while listening to something live messes me up. Really great points, and I'm glad you raised that, Aaron, because you're talking about the recency effect in part, and the recency effect does tell us that we tend to remember better the things that we heard either first or last. And this is the great thing with magnetic memory method, is I teach you how to engineer both the primacy and the recency effect in combination with what's called the serial position effect And there's von Rostorff effect and so forth. A lot of little sciencey terms, right? But it's all about the practice and how you do it, and we can put that together with effective note-taking. And you know that thing about being immersed and really being with the event, that's the first technique that I actually want to talk about, is the technique of not taking notes at all. Now it sounds really controversial, right? And crazy. But one of the problems that we have so much in the world today is attention span. People just really don't have an attention span. And one of the critical activities that we need to do is actually expand our attention span. We need to really focus and tackle that issue, because it's probably the most important issue in the world is attention span. And what use is it taking notes if you have no attention span? Philip, I saw your question there. Thanks for being here, Philip, and I'm going to catch that in a minute. But Philip's here from San Francisco. Thank you for being here. Really great question, so I'm gonna come to it. But the first tip that I have for you is, and do this in a non-consequential environment, not when the stakes are high. Go to a public talk at a library or just a lecture that you just want to go and listen to. I did that a lot when I was in university. Really powerful for expanding knowledge is just go listen to people talk about their expertise and just release yourself from note-taking. Now, you can have it both ways, because if that person will allow you to, record the call or record the talk, and that just releases you from needing to capture it all, needing to write anything down. You can go through it again. And with technology, you can always just turn on the recording and double play it at double speed and play it back and make notes from the recording based on an initial exposure. Isn't that so empowering? It's super empowering, because then you're also practicing being present, listening attentively, working on extending your attention span, and just being really, really aware of the speaker. Then you're getting multiple cues. You're getting their facial expression. You're getting what they're trying to convey between the lines with their hand movements, and you're paying attention to whatever they might be gesturing to on the screen. Now, there's a problem in all of this, which is relative to the quality of the information, your interest in the information, and the abilities of the speaker. So if your speaker is not, particularly entertaining and not really giving you the immersion that you need, well then maybe taking notes, and this is another technique we're going to get to in a second here, is great, and you don't want to do this. But it is still a really, really good way to get some ability with practicing your attention span and giving yourself the ability to take notes from a recording. And there's a lot of options for how you can record. Just ask permission. Maybe it's being recorded anyway, and then you can play it back in double speed. You can do all kinds of things that will allow you to take notes later and optimize that note-taking process. And of course, if you use memory techniques, if you know how to create a proper and effective memory palace, then you can also, by surrendering the need to take all these notes, you can practice using the actual room that you're in as a memory palace and just say, hey, I'm going to memorize 5 points in this lecture, or 4, right? Just use the corners as your stations. You could use 8. You can multiply it in different ways depending on your skills with creating impromptu memory palaces, or maybe you know the room and you've made a more strategic memory palace and you can practice. And I can tell you that you will be much more attentive and present and aware without being distracted by note-taking. You'll be recording it, so you get the best of all possible worlds. You can go back and visit it later, and you'll be practicing your memory, you'll be practicing memory techniques, and you'll be able then to practice the decoding of memory techniques, which is going to get it into long-term memory. If you go a little bit further, then you can actually go and write a little bit, write a summary of what you've learned. You can discuss with others, and that's just going to pop all this stuff into long-term memory a lot faster, just from not taking notes in the event itself. So it is a legitimate note-taking strategy. Might be a bit controversial. Again, I do not recommend that you do this when the stakes are high, but if you practice and you have the permission to record, what are the stakes? There really aren't any stakes. It's a really, really powerful thing. I do it often, and it is a lot of fun. And going back and listening to the recording of something that you've seen, especially when it was an interesting topic, you get the benefit of the repetition, and you get to think about it again from a different angle. So this is really, really powerful. Let me know if you're hopping on the call and what you're doing and what you're thinking. Philip had a question here. He asked, should your note-taking system be closely paired to or derivative of your mnemonic tools, i.e. the Dominic system, for example, or be specific shorthand, almost a code? Well, I mean, look, if you have a Dominic system or you have made your method that you're using somehow, then by all means, if you understand what you've written there, then do it. I mean, this is a cool thing that bridges into passwords, right? If you never reveal to anyone what your 00 to 99 is, or 000 to 999 is, then you can actually write down your passwords in this code, and probably no one will figure it out, right? And so if you're doing a chemistry lecture and there's numbers that you need to memorize and whatnot, then instead of writing down all those numbers, then you could write down your major method figures or what have you. And that's a great way to give yourself an opportunity when you're reading back your notes. Give yourself the opportunity to practice decoding, get better at all things, and it makes it more immersive. It makes it more imaginative. So I'm really glad that you raised that question. But what I want to really seize upon is the should part of your question. You should experiment with this. I have this thing here from our last YouTube Live, which is DOC. If you don't remember what DOC is, then I suggest you go and watch that previous session. But that is a powerful tool that applies here, and it's really, really important that you explore your ideas, because you have ideas and they're really powerful and they sound really good. So report back on what you did, and I think that that's going to create wonderful, wonderful gains for you, and I'd love to hear what happens. Now, I see another comment here from Aaron. We'll catch up with that in just a minute. But the next thing about your note-taking strategy here is, if you're taking notes from the recording, this is super powerful, and you've got a broad overview already. You've primed your memory to make note of certain things, and you've got all the benefits of primacy and recency that Aaron mentioned. And if you've remembered a bunch of stuff using that room as a memory palace, you're using serial positioning and so forth to help you with the environment itself, then you've definitely got a greater sense of recall. And you can listen to that recording back on 2x speed, as I mentioned. But here's the problem with recording lectures, and we got to be really open about the problem, because there's no point in skirting the cons. One of the cons of listening back to recorded lectures, if you've recorded them yourself, like you put your iPhone down on the lectern, or you got a recording from someone else, or even Stanford recorded it, is that sometimes those people did not prepare for a recorded lecture. They're just doing an informal lecture or whatever, and listening back can be a slow experience. There can be shuffling, there could be a lot of dead air and so on, and they're not necessarily speakers who speak for recording. So that's a con as well. But I think if you really want to learn, we can put up with those things, and again, you can 2x speed it. Now let's see, what was the follow-up here from Aaron. He says, I do find I remember more from just weekly lectures I attend by listening. I'll quote things to my wife over a week later. I just remember stuff, but only when I want to and intentionally focus. Yeah, I've had that as well. I've been through it all, like I was telling my story earlier about Mr. Cook and Mrs. Kipp. This is way back in grade 6, and since that time I had to come up with different strategies. There was a time when I wasn't so able to sit for long periods, and I needed to come up with strategies. And I found actually that what I would do better when I didn't have, when I didn't have people, teachers telling me that I couldn't explore what I wanted to explore, that I couldn't draw while I was listening. When I didn't have that, things really exploded for me. So if you go to magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking, what I've done is shared some of my notebooks, and you can see how I take notes, how I developed over time. Some of them look really messy, but there are drawings in them, and I learn more from the drawings than I do from any of the notes, because I'm so immersed in what I'm listening to. My body has something to do, and I can actually ask myself, what was I thinking about when I was making that drawing, and get away with some very, very cryptic words. Also, if you take a look at some of those drawings, like on the second one on the page, you'll see that I'm actually practicing like the recall of cards while that I'm attending a lecture, and just jotting down the last deck that I memorized, just 4C, which is 4 of clubs, and so on. And it's just a lot of fun, and it's also sort of immersive, because maybe the speaker is flipping through something, or someone's asking a question that I can't hear it, and I just still want to keep my attention span going. So I'll just start jotting down what it was that I remembered. But I'm unpacking all kinds of creativity, and really developing greater focus, longevity of focus, and this is a great thing to do. It's a lot of fun to be creative. So if you want to see some of those examples, there's drawings with some bears and crazy character I used to draw, Dr. Fuseless, from my notebooks from lectures I've attended. That's at magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. Now, one of the things that we get here is a comment from Prafula. Hello, if you could use some PowerPoint, then it would be great. Absolutely. If you are interested in PowerPoint presentations, I highly recommend that you're subscribed on my email list. That's where you'll get links to PowerPoint versions. The live here is about interacting with you. If you like the live, please hit subscribe and hit the like button to let me know you're engaged. Let me know where you are in the world, and what you're doing, what you're thinking, what your experiences are with note-taking. We've had some great questions from Philip, and also some great feedback from Aaron, and so I really appreciate it. If you're hopping on now and you missed that, then maybe you can see on the live the questions as they came in, and if not, then you can watch the replay. I've been reading out those comments and questions. Really amazing questions, especially Philip's about matching or blending in something like a Dominic system if you have it, or major method, and some comments that I made about that. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people prefer to do, though, is they prefer to go and then fill pages upon pages and pages of notes, be really focused, and they miss most of the lecture, right? And then later, two things happen. One is that all their notes are buried in a linear form, up and down. They are flipping back and forth from page to page to page, trying to make sense of this wash of information that they put there. And then they have the other problem, which is that they can't really understand what it was that they did, and they missed all the good stuff. They just wrote down a bunch of useless information that wasn't relevant, and this is a real bad thing to get into. So what's the pro here? Well, you get bigger forearms. I mean, if you've ever had this experience where you're taking lots and lots of notes, you may have felt that pain in your forearms, and felt like you got a lot of fitness, and you'll feel like you accomplished a lot, but really you haven't accomplished a lot. You've got a bunch of activity, and it is just crazy to put in that much physical activity and come out the other end with so little mental accomplishment, memory accomplishment. So here's a big suggestion for you, and that is to have a note-taking strategy and a style planned out in advance. And that's going to take some experimentation. It's going to take some exploration. It's going to take you knowing more about you and your learning styles, and really getting sharp on what works for you. And what works for other people may not work for you, but it's worth exploring. So there are a lot of note-taking techniques out there, and you can see dividing your page in this or that way. That never worked for me. It might work great for you. For me, what worked better is really just doing a lot of drawing, mind mapping, half mind mapping, getting myself really immersed in the moment and having a backup if I needed it, which rarely I did, which is recording. And I think what you want to do too is really, really understand that that singular event, that lecture, is a connection point, and it's a bridge to other things. And so that bridge to other things is the opportunity to speak about what you heard with other people. It is the opportunity to write a little bit in forms of a summary, or maybe re-note taking. Like if you want to use index cards, you can take notes from your notes if you want. And then if you know how to use a Memory Palace and in a hybrid form with index cards, then you can do that. That's all taught in the masterclass, which you can learn about at magneticmemorymethod.com. I think that the real point is that you need to develop your style. Licenification is here. It says, wonderful lecture. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. I personally improved my study habits by implementing this information. Thank you so much. Licenification. I love that name. It's so cool. It reminds me of Californication from the Chili Peppers, which I think is a really cool song, really immersive song. And if you've ever been to California, of course, it would bring to mind a lot of memory palaces. So I don't sing very well, but I hope that you see the connection between that name and Californication. And incidentally, licenification, I got to tell you, I wrote one of my master's studies on the vanity license plate phenomenon. Just a little side note here, but that was a really, really interesting project. It's called Autolog, as in the dialogue of autos. And I went deep into this idea of the vanity plates and looked at how they create meaning and the kinds of meaning that are created. I went into the history of vanity plates, and that was ultimately published in an academic journal. So that was a lot of fun. And a shout out to Christian Book, who was my supervisor of that. It was a directed reading and during my Master's of English. And what a great experience. So you reminded me of that. And now there's actually two potential memory palaces that I never thought of. So you gave me the opportunity to think of where I used to meet Christian Book. Predominantly, we met in a couple different places, but there was one place in particular that had vegan stuff on the menu, and I always got orange juice every time we met to discuss my project. And man, he suggested so many great books. One that is by Jean Baudrillard, which is called America, and wow, just a great memory. And oddly enough, he moved to Australia like myself. I believe he's up in Darwin, and we met on the train tracks one time in Berlin, which is just so crazy. What are the odds? And now we have both moved to Australia. So interesting how things play out that way. But if you don't know Christian Book, check out his stuff. He has done really interesting things with poetry, and I love Eunoia, which is one of his books, and his whole thing with the Xenotype project. Fascinating, really stimulating in your brain, and just makes a lot of things possible, a lot of thoughts possible. And his book on pataphysics is incredible. And I would also say that you've got to check out him performing the Sonata. It's a great performance. He really created a memory challenge I've never taken, which is to actually memorize the Sonata. Anyway, your name really brought up all that stuff. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this is to demonstrate to you how to practice your memory. Is just associate what comes up with things that you remember. and you're exercising your memory. So I'm publicly exercising my memory, thinking about all this stuff, thinking about where we used to meet. Now I've got a new memory palace. So when people say, how do you get hundreds and thousands of memory palaces? And there are people who have way more memory palaces than I do. And one of the ways that you do it is you have your memory palace radar on. And so when something triggers a thought, triggers some memories, go with it. I've been doing this for years and years and years, and for whatever reason, I've never thought about that one restaurant he and I used to meet to go over my project, and it's just triggered like that from an association. Now, what's the lesson here? The lesson is that all memory is based on association. There's a science to it. Aaron on this call, he was gracious enough to contribute with some comments, and he mentioned the recency effect, and you know, the recency effect works because of the association of time with proximity to your brain and how your brain works, and you can maximize it more by learning the tools of memory and really getting good at understanding these principles and having them work in your favor. They do so much heavy lifting for you if you just know how to do it, in addition to ongoing constant memory practice, which you can do each and every day of your life, almost down to the minute, if you are becoming aware of your memory and letting your memory be your guide, just as I have demonstrated here. So that was great. I really appreciate that. If you're just hopping on now, let me know where you are in the world. And thanks everybody for the comments and the interaction so far. This is all about interaction on these lives. And for the recorded material with a bit more polish, please go to magneticmemorymethod.com. The new podcast that I've just launched is magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. It's all about note-taking. It's got this material with some images from my notebooks. I think you'll really get a kick out of looking at them. Aaron asks, was I right about DOC? Doing is the origin of confidence, as we were talking about last time, but you're right that doing is also the origin of courage, I believe is how you put it. So courage and confidence go together. If you haven't read the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, he has some great ideas about courage. Well, Aaron, you were more than close. You're actually dead on, because it should be courage and confidence. So let's call it DOCC from now on, because it can be both confidence and courage. But it triggers to mind. Again, I'm demonstrating just what you can do with your memory. It triggers the memory of Aristotle and the Nicomachean Ethics and his thoughts about courage. So you're dead on because you give the opportunity to think more thoughts. One of the things that Aristotle talks about with courage, and this is why confidence and courage really need to go together, is that courage is great, but you don't want courage to the point of insane bravery that leads you into chaos, into danger, into negative effect, which is why that I told you at the beginning of this lecture, if you're going to try my radical note-taking technique, you want to do it when the stakes are relatively low, to experiment with it, to explore it, and make sure you have a backup in terms of a recording and so forth. Because this is what happens, and it happens to a lot of people when they first get into memory techniques. I know it certainly happened to me, is that your courage is like way over the top. Now, fortunately, I was lucky to not make mistakes in these situations. But there are other times where you feel like you have more confidence than you do, because you're like, yeah, I've got it. And you don't do the appropriate things, like making sure your recency effect is backed up with the serial positioning stuff. All that's explained at magneticmemorymethod.com without the scientific terms. But really amazing what happens for you when you understand the golden mean, which Aristotle talks about. So that sweet spot between like outlandish bravery and timidness, or even cowardice, and then courage, which is another way of creating confidence, is developing courage. And Aaron points out that this is where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is exactly what really the golden mean can do for you. So if you haven't read the Nicomachean Ethics, please do. It's one of the best books that you'll ever read. I was deeply concentrated on it and focused on it for my dissertation, which was on friendship. And he has chapters in the Nicomachean Ethics on friendship. It's very, very fine material to develop as a good citizen of the world, a friend of the world. And it's good for your memory to know more about friendship, because you'll conduct and engage in your friendships in different ways. And that can make you a profound person who experiences greater happiness than you could have without understanding friendship in a higher form. And you know, the great thing about that is the more profound your friendships are, the greater your memories are, and then the more you end up practicing your memory naturally, because you remember all the great things that you need. You remember all the great things that you need to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself happy, to keep yourself filled with courage, to keep yourself filled with confidence, to keep yourself filled with the energy to learn more and the desire to learn more. And so that is a very, very powerful thing. That's the Nicomachean Ethics. And, that reminds me of another shout out I want to make. Alex Mullen has a new post on his podcast, and he's a great friend to all people who want to improve their memory. The material he shared on mullenmemory.com is incredible, and he has a new post about fighting palace fatigue with interleaved practice. And so you want to check that out. Go to mullenmemory.com, and I really appreciate the material that he puts out there. So if there are any other things that people want to say about note-taking, let me know. To sum up, I really think that you should practice not taking notes. Do it in places and at times when you are not going to risk your education or career. So public lectures at libraries, lectures at your university, art gallery lectures or whatever. Ask for permission to record. Call in advance. Hey, are you recording that session? And will it be made available? And then still ask if you could make your own recording. So everything's backed up. You feel calm and cool and relaxed. Do all the magnetic memory method relaxation techniques that I teach so that you're really immersed in the situation. And then practice making a memory palace from the event itself. Practice being there, being immersed, and really enjoy that immersion so that you're able to get more out of your memory, get more out of the experience, and actually use memory techniques in person, live, with an impromptu or a pre-prepared memory palace. Very, very powerful. And then the next thing I would suggest is make notes from recordings. Get good at that. I mean, there's so many great lectures on YouTube. You can pause, you can reflect, you can think about your note-taking strategy. You can encode using mnemonics while you're taking the notes. And that's a really, really super great thing to do. And then just in general, study yourself. Be aware of yourself. Note your preferences. Note what's working for you. Try different things. Try different things and go further. Have a little journal, a memory journal, where you discuss with yourself. Have a conversation with yourself about what's working for you, but get it out of your head. Get that conversation somewhere where it's externalized so that you can then look at it objectively and test your own assumptions about what's going on, because that's how you get to optimize. That's how you get to improve. Artists have journals. You are an artist. You might not know it, but you're a scientist and an artist, but you're not necessarily using the tools of your own artistry and science. So Da Vinci, he was a great, great figure that we can look back to and model. If you want to see some of my notebooks, and I'm not a great artist, but you'll see that I've had a little influence from Da Vinci's own notebooks there. So that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. And I learned a lot from his notebooks, his journaling style. And he was an artist and a scientist of the highest order. So you can do that too. All you got to do is have a memory journal. It's really simple. And create your own rules for your memory journal. If you need some guidance, I've got lots of guidance for you on that. But the point is to do, because doing is the origin of courage, as Aaron pointed out, and of confidence. And it's an incredible, incredible thing to be a doer. Otherwise, you're just a consumer, and being a doer also means optimizing the process. So you reflect on your doing, you optimize your doing, you get better. And you can get better and better and better. There's really no Mount Everest in you. You can always go higher and higher and optimize. Kyler says, thank you so much for sharing your journal. Kyler, thanks for going and checking that out. Kind of a personal thing to do that, but I thought you might get a kick out of some of that. And these are from journals across the years, and I'm so glad that my journals made it during my move. I was worried. Some of my stuff, well, I wasn't worried. It's just physical objects. You can always make more, right? But I was getting concerned that my stuff from Berlin wasn't making it to Brisbane, and just like my memory journals. Whoa! Gets a little disconcerting after a while, but I really, really am glad that they showed up eventually, and that made it possible for me to do this. Another thing I should point out is that people sometimes they fill out the surveys on my website. I really appreciate that. This particular post is a response to someone who said, hey, I'd like to see something about note-taking on the podcast, on your site. And so I aim to serve, and there it is. That's my take on note-taking. It's one take on note-taking, and I think that there's more important messages there that we're not going to cover on this live that you really need to take into account for yourself, because all the note-taking in the world isn't going to do you that much if you don't have I only have so many hands here, but if you don't take the 6 points on top of note-taking that I cover there into account. So you really want to get those things working for you. And this was a great time that we had together today. If there's no further questions, I really want to appreciate all of you who were engaged and participating, and thank you very much for being here, for sharing, Aaron and Philip in particular, your contributions. Licensification also says, glad to have brought up good memories. Looking forward to your next live session. Keep up the good work and continue doing. I'll be checking out the last website you mentioned. Best wishes. Thanks, Licensification. There we go. That's a great name, and so many memories that you gave. So if you happen to be catching this right now and you didn't get previous parts of this, you can see the live on magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking, because I'm going to put this video over there. Take a little while to put together, but you can review it there, and that's going to be a lot of fun to see the feedback. I love when you guys leave your comments and your thumbs up, and really you can, just today I got all kinds of emails from people that are saying, how can I help, how can I contribute? One of the ways to do is share this material around. Philip says, I thank you kindly. I thank you, Philip. Really great to have you here, and appreciate it. But when people say, how can I help? Well, I mean, the obvious way is to be engaged and to share your thoughts, your experiences, your questions, your concerns, your worries, your needs, and to be sharing this material with your friends and with your coworkers and whatnot, if you think they'll find it useful. And ultimately, the best thing that you can do is to learn memory techniques and then actually teach them. Show to others what you can do and teach them. Now, there's 2 reasons why that's so important. The first is self-serving, which is not bad. You actually learn the techniques better when you explain them. There's multiple ways to explain them, one of which we've just talked about, and you can just keep a memory journal. That's going to help you so much in your practice in multiple ways, and that's a lot of fun to do, to see progress over time, and to enjoy and explore what you're doing. And the other thing is that as you develop expertise in what you're doing and you learn the techniques better, you're going to encourage more people to learn better, to know more about their memory. Memory is the biggest asset that we have. And the more people who are using their memory at higher levels, who are practicing their memory, the more joy they have in life, the more power they have in life, the better life they have. The life they have becomes more worthy of remembering. And that's the most exciting thing in the world, because there's so much misery and complaining and and bizarre things going on in the world. What we really need is Hulk smash. No, what we really need is less Hulk smash and more people who are in love with everyday experience. They are joyful learners, they're lifelong learners, they're people who are living lives worthy of remembering and who are learning more and sharing what they learned. This is what we need to make utopia. Now, is utopia possible? I don't know, but I think it is pretty close to possible, so long as it's taking place in your head. There are known, demonstrated, proven ways to make yourself happier. One of those is to be able to learn better, faster, with greater depth of integrity and with greater levels of intelligence, so that you are able to enjoy your brain. And how you learn at a higher level is by sharing what you've learned with others and being the portal, being a bridge to learning and sharing what you've learned. And you know what? You're not going to ever please everybody. You're not going to ever reach everybody. You don't have to go around like a crazy madman screaming at the top of your lungs all the great things that you've learned. All you need to do is really demonstrate a higher form of learning and knowledge, which is practice your memory and share how you do it and what you do. And just be open about it. Radical honesty about your memory is so freeing, and it just gives you a higher path in life, and it gives you more amazing experiences. It's really a lot of fun. And then you can avoid having to Hulk smash, because that's what too many people are doing these days. Holy cow. I've seen some things on the news where, geez Louise, there's going to be some Hulk smashing going on just because there are not enough people learning how to use their memory, learning at a higher level and developing better ethics, and they're getting into control. They're getting into power. And you are in the generation, we're all in the generation, where we can have better people running our world. People who are much more capable and less Hulk smashy, because they'll remember how saying stupid things to each other is not cool. So I mentioned Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics today. Go and read it, memorize some stuff from it, share how you memorize the stuff, and be a good citizen and be a good friend to the world, because that's going to make you happier. It's going to make you have so much more joy and ease, less worry. It actually creates brain chemicals that are related to well-being. We know this. There's no need to deny it, and the path is clear. The path is clear. So get on the path, you won't regret it. PM Kieran says, thank you, Anthony, for sharing your knowledge. Keep up the good work. Well, read the ethics book by Aristotle. Remember, it's Nicomachean Ethics, which is different than the ethics. It's important. Read them both, but I'm referring in particular to the Nicomachean Ethics. It's shorter, and it has the stuff on friendship, and really great. Aaron says, that being said, this site has information on nearly every subject of life and uses the Bible to answer it all very clearly. Well, thank you for that, Aaron. I'm sure people who are interested will follow up on that. Just avoid the Hulk smash if it's there, as I drink from the Hulk smash. We really, really need to remember things from all across human knowledge, but we need to test what we've remembered, and we need to test it for the integrity of the quality of the ideas. And I believe that you will find out that there are some ideas that are better than others, but you only find out their betterness, if we can put it that way, by testing them, being honest about them, and really, really, really being clear and careful that the ideas you involve yourself in, that you follow up with by taking action, really are true and honest ideas. And I think that note-taking is a great way to absolutely make sure that your ideas are on the board. But we've given you some above board. We've given you some alternative ideas about how to take note-taking, and you got to test them for yourself. Aaron says, with regards to what I'm saying, so true. Thank you for saying that. Well, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. End of the day, these ideas need to be tested like any other. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, you know what, I tried that, wasn't for me. Nothing wrong about that. If there is a wrong, it is dismissing things that you haven't tried for yourself. Now, of course, common sense says you don't have to try cocaine, okay? So don't take this out of context or take it the wrong way. There are certain things that you can criticize without trying for yourself, but there are certain things, and sadly some of the best things are things that people don't try for themselves but are happy to criticize. And that is a sadness in the world, but so it is. You don't have to fall prey to that. You can be your own filter and find the things that are meaningful to you and explore them, dive in, and benefit. Philip says, thanks for your references to classical literature. Very cool. Well, there's more to come. I read widely in these things, in these realms of gold, and I hope that you do too. And let me know what you're reading. There's so much out there that you can just have a great experience if you just surrender yourself to the knowledge. You know, some rule of thumb that I've heard, James Clear, I don't know if you know James Clear, he talked about, you know, how you should be reading books that are at least 100 years old because they've stood the test of time. Now, there's an Achilles heel to that argument, because I think you need balance. You need new books also. You need to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the now, but new books are great. Old books are especially great, and not necessarily the ones that have stood the test of time either. You can also go digging around and exploring ones that haven't stood the test of time. Nothing wrong with that either. I want to make a quick shout out along that. Philip, I appreciate you very much mentioning classical literature as being something you enjoy. I enjoy it a lot. A lot of people email me about Latin and rhetoric and all that sort of stuff. And today I want to give a shout out to someone I got an email from named Corwin. And he said, he says, hello, Dr. Metivier, I'm Corwin, and I begin to find interest in memory techniques a few months after I familiarized myself with lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is a really interesting topic, and I've covered it in my course on how to remember your dreams. He goes on, I've read a book or two on memory, like Moonwalking with Einstein and the Rhetorica ad Herennium. Interesting classical literature to read. Neither, he says, seem to give any practical day-to-day use of memory enhancement, but then I heard about you and how you're spreading the gift of an amazing memory. I've read through your available worksheets, took notes on everything mentioned, note-taking, interesting, and thank you. I've begun to clear out my mind palaces to use your method, and I'm beginning again with historical dates and important events. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? So he's mentioned both old book and a new book. What could be better than bringing the two together, right? So I like James Clear's point. I get it. But by the same token, bring the two together. Don't ignore new stuff. Moonwalking with Einstein, a lot of people make that criticism that it doesn't have practical tips about memory techniques to use and so forth. I'm not sure that that's the conclusion I would reach with Moonwalking with Einstein. I think, though, that everything has to do with where you are on your journey, which is not a relativistic statement, but when it comes to practical skills, you're going to read that book based on where you are now. And then when you go and reread it, which I highly recommend rereading at least one book a month. I've got a podcast to that nature, to that effect, which is actually one of the most popular posts on my site. So if you haven't gone through that, it's been highly regarded and well received, and there's reasons why. It establishes a compelling argument about why you should be rereading books and how to get more out of your rereading and why you get more out of your rereading. Because you need to understand that when you just read a book once, you probably haven't really read it. And that's been the point about this note-taking stuff as well, is to really help you guys understand how to get true power out of note-taking. We haven't been able to cover it all in this YouTube live, so please go to magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking, and that will give you some images from my own notebooks. Kyler chimed in to say that he appreciated that, and yeah, there's a lot more to be discovered over at magneticmemorymethod.com, and I gave a shout out to another resource earlier, and Kyler says, "Sweet flow, brother. Appreciate the wisdom." I really appreciate you being here, and for those of you who haven't been on a call when Kyler was here, just down there. Woo! Oh, I think you saw my dirty laundry there. Oh no, it's clean. At least it's clean. It's drying. Just down there, he visited me in a cafe called the Menagerie. Really great memory. Really great memory, and I remember it every time he's here. This is the thing, guys. Practice your memory. Learn that your memory is with you always in the now, and there's a higher experience of your memory available to you. You just got to tap into it, and it is the path to presence. I'm doing a lot of studies right now in something that's called persistent non-symbolic experience. That's like fancy language for enlightenment. And one of the puzzles with enlightenment that is really difficult is, how does memory factor into a non-symbolic experience? The idea that you're in the now, fully immersed and engaged in the present moment. And it's a fascinating question. I haven't got like a full answer for it, but one of the things that I feel is to follow your memory, to be invested in your memory and see how your memory is with you in the present moment. So we're normally transported to the past when we're in our memory, and there's a real solid connection between that and the future. It's so fascinating because when you're fantasizing about the future, you're using very similar tools to the construction, because your memory is always a construction. It's a reconstruction of the past, and you're bringing various elements together from different parts of the spatial locations in your brain that have chemically encoded the material, stored it, and you have to reconsolidate it all. That's all like fascinating stuff. But similar things are going on when you fantasize about the future. In some sense, you're remembering a future that hasn't even happened yet, and you can remember what you fantasized about later on. Isn't that weird? It's cool. But when you practice memory and you're practicing non-symbolic experience, you're actually kind of escaping that loop in a way, but then you can remember it. So I've been having these persistent non-symbolic experiences, and I remember them really, really well. So I'm trying to think about the memory angle here, and well, some people have talked about it. Gary Weber, who wrote Happiness Beyond Thought, talks about it. Really fascinating book, and I want to delve deeper into it. Gary Weber has suggested to me to look at the memory of birds. I'm going to do that. Take some notes on it, of course. No Hulk smash in the bird world and their memories, but we'll see what's going on with bird memory and how that relates. Harvinder's here. Thanks for being here, Harvinder. I really appreciate it. I love when I see your name. You're a great masterclass person, as is Kyler, and I love those of you who show up and do the practice of memory. You show up to the art of memory and interact and engage with it at a higher level. That's really rewarding, and I appreciate you being here. Aaron asks, is that where déjà vu comes from? Déjà vu is a really interesting phenomenon. Kyler says, seeing what is as it is. Yes. And in a way, that's ties into déjà vu, because déjà vu is kind of like an opportunity to see what is as it is, but you're already getting into an illusory experience in some sense, because you have to manufacture the question and then think about it using elements of inquiry, which are interesting. There's an alternative to déjà vu, which is jamais vu, which I'll leave it to you guys to look that stuff up and explore it. But we can speak that, maybe this is suggesting to me something good, which is that there may be a podcast in the works about this, or maybe something more exclusive in the mastermind, which would be fun. In all cases, this is exactly the quest in many ways that Kyler raises, and I think it's super important. No, that's not the button I wanted. Seeing what is as it is. Great point, Kyler, because when we're using memory techniques, that's exactly what we're doing. We are seeing what is as it is. And why memory is such a beautiful art and science, and why it blends art and science together so tightly, is that you're using your creativity in combination with space. Spatial memory, episodic memory, semantic memory, procedural memory, they're all being wound up tight together in this crisp, beautiful moment. And you know what? That's the time for Hulk smash, okay? That's the time when you want to get all that energy and over-the-topness all together in a spot, so that you can recall later what is exactly as it is, because you either remember it or you don't. But there are beautiful gray areas that have so much power because you've remembered it 100% accurately, in addition to the material that you created in your mind in order to cause that recall, or you recalled it 100% accurately without the training wheels, the mnemonic devices, or you have some level of accuracy, a near miss, and an opportunity to figure out what's going to make it 100%, or you have a complete bomb, which is one of the best gifts of all, because then you can think about what went wrong here, what is going wrong in my practice, which essentially means what is going right in my practice when you stop it down and you use the opportunity to correct your path, to get back on the horse, and enable yourself, empower yourself to correct, to guide. Your memory is your brain, and your brain is a boat on a sea of chemicals, right? And those chemicals are interesting with respect to this boat. We're going to tie this up in a minute here, but your brain is actually made out of the chemicals. Your boat is made out of the chemicals that it's floating in, right? Isn't that interesting? And so when you make a mistake, it's not really a mistake. It is an opportunity to learn more about the relationship between the boat and the ocean, the brain and the chemicals that it swims in, the chemicals that it's made out of. And that's where you get so much power, so much fulfillment, is by really being the captain of that ship, knowing it inside and out. Your memory has parts, it has pieces that work in coordination with the ocean itself, because they are the same. They are the same in so many ways. And so your exploration and your practice is figuring out that relationship, optimizing every part of your boat so that it integrates better with the ocean. Now, there's also the wind, and so you've got sails, and you can pivot those sails to optimize how the wind is taking you where you want to go. Coolest thing of all is that you can put down the sails, moor the ship, and get off on little islands and go explore things, and then come back, get back on the boat. Heck, you can build a second boat. You can build a fleet of ships if you want. But it all really, really comes down to the boat that you're on, understanding how you are that boat, and how that the ocean that the boat is riding along are fundamentally built of the same material. They're all one. In a way, at least that's a way of thinking about it. And it's an empowering way if you think about it. Noting that doing is the origin of courage, doing is the origin of command, doing is the origin of certainty, doing is the origin of control, doing is the origin of all kinds of things that are so empowering for you. Aaron says, too figurative for me to follow. Aaron, when I was a younger person, I encountered things that were too figurative for me to follow also. Heck, sometimes I encounter things to this day that are too figurative for me to follow. And the question is, are you going to practice exposing yourself to challenge, or are you going to run away? This is a great thing. Figurativeness is an opportunity to grow. And it's not for everybody, but if you really, really think about it, figurative, abstract, metaphorical, allegorical thinking is a very, very powerful thing to engage in. And so I hope that you will seek out more opportunities to be exposed to that. Go to art galleries. Understand why art evolved as it did in the 20th century. Just understanding that alone, as figurative as all that art can get, will open up so much in your brain. It'll open up so much potential thought that is lying dormant, because in the figurative is so much wealth, so much intellectual wealth. It's incredible. It's incredible. And we have academic departments shutting down. People aren't learning Latin. They aren't learning Greek, ancient Greek. They aren't studying the classics, and they're missing out on figurative stuff. Go read Plato's Republic and the debate about whether or not people should be reading the Iliad. All right? It's incredible. It's incredible. We're going to see the consequences of all this. I guess there are arguments for cutting out figurative thinking from our culture, but I think that's not a good thing. It's not a good place to go. Aaron has a follow-up comment here. Of course, just what you described was very much based on the perception of your own experience and not definitive to how the next guy might experience the same thing. Well, that's the question though, right? Is that our brains are so similar. Our experiences are so similar. So I'll mention one last book before we go. Kyler says, it's not about what he's saying, it's about what it could mean to you. Yeah, that's closer to it. I think that what we need to always think about is not the relativism. Oh, that's for you because it's relative to you. What we need to think about is the relationship between how we're all the same, and really seize upon that, because what other people have done means you can do it too, right? They can only do it because they have the sameness that you have, right? It's like the Matrix, right? Because it's based on rules. You can break those rules, but you have to have the understanding of those. So another book that I'll recommend is called You Are Not So Smart. I always dislike that title in a way because it sounds like I'm saying you are not so smart. When I say it, that's not what I mean. But the book is called You Are Not So Smart. It gives you the science of why we're all the same and why that we have outcomes all the same. Aaron says, true, good point. Thank you, Aaron. Go and read that book, You Are Not So Smart. It will show you how the path to power is in the similarities you and I share, not the differences, because those differences are a lot more limited than we like to think. We don't like to think so much about the truth, the real, but welcome to the desert of the real, because that's where Neo finds all his power, not in the Matrix. He finds it in the real, okay? So if you want the real, figurative thinking is where it's at, but there's plenty of science as well. You Are Not So Smart is a brilliant book. Hey, I think I just found my August book that I want to reread, because I was thinking of what it was. Since I got on this trend, I've had a couple. Waking Up last month, rereading that, beautiful. It's more about memory than I remembered, which is what's so great about rereading books. All right, guys. So lots and lots of suggestions for you to follow up on this YouTube Live. I thank you all. This has been really amazing. I appreciate your contributions very much. I love meeting with you. And speaking of figurative, we've had a little metaphor here. Who can name the painting that this should bring to mind if you know painting. I'll give you a hint. The letter V is involved and the letter N is involved, okay? So post somewhere here, well, post your answer to that riddle if you like on magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. There might be a special prize. In fact, there will be a special surprise for the first person who knows what I'm referring to, okay? Aaron says, awesome, bro. Have a great night. Well, it's morning here. It's afternoon. Thank you, guys. Really, really, really appreciate you being here. And look forward to anybody who can solve this riddle. Lots of fun. Color says, thanks, Anthony. Thank you again, Color, for being here and the memories that you've created. I appreciate that very much. Guys, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. Kritesh says, thank you so much. Kritesh, wow, thanks for tuning in. I really, really hope you got a lot out of this. I hope it has helped you. Aaron says, Van Gogh, no, but a V and an N. Let's say the painter has the V, the painting has the N. That's the last clue I'll give. That needs to be posted at magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking. The podcast is already there. The full rundown in text is already there. The pictures from my own memory journals, note-taking sessions in lectures are already there. Please support the work that I do by sharing that material. Leave a comment in the discussions. And if you solve this riddle first, then great things kind of coming your way. And yeah, so thanks for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Aaron says, I don't even see what you're referring to. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com. It is the newest, latest post, and you should be able to see it there. Unless my website is down, let me press refresh button on my own browser. Woohoo! I like these lives. I hope you guys are enjoying these lives. I really have a lot of fun engaging with you. And Kritesh says, yes, I loved the boat analogy. Awesome. I loved it too. I think it is the path to truth. So never fear analogies. Expose yourself to as many as you can, because they will make your life more rewarding. And go for the science too. Go for the rationality. Read some of the books that we mentioned. Read all of them, and then reread them. Take notes. Share with me the notes that you took. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Had a great, great time with you. This has been the highlight of my day, and many highlights to come as a result, as I remember these experiences, these ideas. And I'm going to pop this live on that page, magneticmemorymethod.com/note-taking, and you can revisit it anytime. I think you can play it in 2x speed if you want, and take notes. And if you solve that riddle first, great things coming your way. Take care and have a great day, and until we speak again, much love from the Magnetic Memory Method headquarters on my balcony in Brisbane, and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye. Ooh, that's my thumb. That's my finger. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.